In 1974, a break-in ring worked its way through 6 farmhouses in one Missouri county in a single month, hitting every house with a modern alarm system first, because those houses announced themselves with a keypad light glowing in the window like a beacon. The 7th house on their list had no alarm, no keypad, no glowing panel anywhere in sight, nothing electronic at all for a thief to spot from the road. They studied it from a distance, found nothing worth the risk of the unknown, and skipped it entirely, moving on to easier targets 3 miles down the same county road. That house belonged to a widow named Ruth Callahan, and her entire perimeter defense cost less than $11 to build, most of it spent on a spool of wire and a bag of gravel. Today we pay $8,000 for a system of sensors and cameras that a skilled thief can identify from the street, research online, and defeat before he ever reaches your door. But our grandparents built perimeters that gave them something no modern system ever will: real warning, real time, and real advantage on their own land. Advantages that never once depended on a company hundreds of miles away staying in business. Number 14 on this list is still quietly used by military perimeter specialists today under a different, more technical name. Number 3 costs nothing at all and works better than the motion sensor currently sitting in your front yard collecting dust and false alerts. Hit that subscribe button and let us count down 24-man perimeter defense tricks that make $8,000 alarm systems look completely useless the moment the power actually goes out. Number 20, the gravel voice. A modern motion sensor announces an intruder to a phone screen somewhere far away, completely useless the second the power or the internet connection fails, which statistically happens most often during exactly the kind of storm or outage that criminals prefer. A band of loose gravel laid 4 feet wide along every approach to the house does the same essential job for free, forever, with nothing to charge and nothing to hack. Nobody crosses gravel silently, not in boots, not barefoot, not moving slow, not moving fast, the loose stones shifting and grinding under any weight at all. Your grandfather laid it under every window, beside every door, along the one natural path a man would take approaching in the dark, and every single step became a warning bell that needed no battery and no monthly subscription fee. Some families ran it in a wide continuous ring completely around the entire house rather than just beneath the windows, so that no matter which direction trouble came from, the same silent alarm was already waiting patiently for it. It never once needed a firmware update, and it never once failed during a storm, an outage, or a power surge the way every electronic system eventually does. Number 19, the Thorn Wall. Landscaping companies sell decorative hedges for pure curb appeal today, charging handsomely for the aesthetic alone. Your grandmother planted the exact same varieties of hedge for an entirely different, far more practical reason. A dense wall of hawthorn, blackberry, or climbing rose planted beneath every single ground floor window turned the most obvious entry point on the entire house into something no one could approach quietly, quickly, or without leaving visible blood behind as evidence. Modern security consultants now call this concept crime prevention through environmental design and charge real money to draw up a formal landscaping plan built around exactly this same idea. Your grandmother called it a fence that grew a little thicker and a little more effective every single year for free. Unlike a wooden fence that eventually rotted through or a metal one that eventually rusted and weakened, a thorn hedge only became a more serious, more permanent obstacle with every passing season, requiring nothing more than an occasional trim to keep it exactly shaped where she wanted it. Number 18, the false light pattern. A house lit up like broad daylight the instant anyone approaches tells a burglar exactly one useful thing: that a very expensive, very sensitive system is actively watching him right now. It also tells him precisely which rooms are occupied and which sit empty, information he can use immediately. Your grandparents used the completely opposite strategy, keeping most of the house genuinely dark and relying on their own eyes, already adjusted to the night, watching a moonlit yard from inside a dark room while remaining entirely invisible from anyone standing outside it. One single lamp, deliberately left burning in a room nobody actually used that night, created a convincing illusion of full occupancy without ever once revealing where the family truly was sleeping or gathered. That single lit window did more honest, effective work protecting the family than any floodlight ever could, because it lied convincingly to a stranger instead of simply announcing the plain truth to anyone watching from the road. Number 17. The dog that never left the yard. A dog kept inside a house barks at a stranger through a closed window and a solid door, muffled, delayed, and easy to underestimate from outside. A dog that lived and slept just outside instead, positioned near the most likely entry point on the property, heard a footstep on the road before any human ear possibly could and reacted to it immediately, with no delay and no wall standing between the warning and the world beyond it. The specific placement mattered considerably more than the breed itself ever did. Burglars interviewed in every single era have said essentially the same thing every time asked. They skipped the house with a dog outside entirely and moved quietly to the silent one next door instead. A smaller dog often worked even better than a large one for exactly this reason, barking at absolutely everything without any discrimination whatsoever, which meant a stranger scouting the property could never predict whether that particular bark signaled real danger or simply a passing rabbit in the yard. Number 16. The trip line. Every farm kid in America once knew how to build this without ever being taught twice, passing the knowledge down almost by osmosis. A length of ordinary fishing line strung ankle-high across a gate or a garden path, tied at the far end to a cluster of tin cans loaded with pebbles or a spent shell casing for extra noise. A man who caught that line in the dark sent the whole string rattling and crashing violently, and the sound carried straight into a sleeping house within seconds. It could not be hacked, jammed, or disabled remotely by anyone, because it ran on nothing but simple physics and a piece of string that cost almost nothing at all to replace. Families strung it specifically across the paths leading to the smokehouse or the chicken coop, the two spots a hungry stranger was statistically most likely to visit first under cover of darkness, protecting exactly the resources most worth stealing. This is where the truth about perimeter defense gets genuinely uncomfortable to sit with. Every single trick on this list so far shares the exact same core idea, and it is not really about physically stopping an intruder at all. It is entirely about buying seconds, real and immediate seconds, before he ever actually reaches the door itself. A modern alarm system alerts a monitoring center somewhere far away that then calls a dispatcher, who then sends a patrol car that arrives, on a genuinely good night with no other calls pending, in 8 to 12 minutes at the very best. Your grandparents' perimeter alerted the one single person who actually mattered in that exact moment, the one standing inside the house with something in hand ready to act, instantly, every single time, with absolutely nothing standing between the warning and the immediate response. No dispatcher reading from a script, no operator deciding whether the alert deserved priority, no delay caused by a call center sitting on the opposite side of the entire country weighing whether your particular alarm was worth escalating that night. Number 15. The barred window shutter. Decorative shutters bolted flat and permanent to the outside of a modern house do essentially nothing at all beyond looking pleasant from the street. Real functional shutters, hinged properly and closed from the inside with a solid iron pin dropped firmly through the latch, turned an ordinary pane of glass into something closer to an actual wall. The glass itself could still be smashed easily enough, but the solid wood behind it would not give way, and the considerable noise of trying bought a family every single second of warning it desperately needed in that moment. It ran on nothing more than 2 boards and a pin set carefully by hand every single night before bed, a small ritual that took less than a minute to complete. In genuine storm country, these same shutters did valuable double duty against the weather as well, but their first and most important job, every single night of the entire year, remained firmly keeping people out rather than simply keeping wind out. Number 14. The perimeter listening post. Military units still formally teach a version of this exact concept today under proper technical terminology, but your grandfather ran the identical concept off nothing more than a porch chair and a genuinely good ear. A specific spot chosen deliberately for its clear sight line and open natural acoustics, where a man sitting quietly in the evening could hear anything moving across the property long before he could ever actually see it approaching. Positioning mattered considerably more than any equipment ever could. A porch angled correctly toward the most likely approach picked up a footstep, a snapped branch, or a disturbed animal from 100 yards out with total reliability, no battery required. No false alarms triggered by a passing cat or a blown leaf. Sitting there those extra few minutes each evening cost absolutely nothing and gave a family the kind of genuine situational awareness that modern camera systems, for all their expense, still struggle to replicate honestly. Number 13. The whitewashed glass trick. A thin coat of ordinary soap or lightly diluted white paint brushed carefully across the lower half of a window let plenty of light through while making it essentially impossible for anyone standing outside to see in clearly or accurately count how many people were actually home that night. It washed off easily with plain water the moment it was no longer needed for the season, cost only a few pennies of material, and denied a scouting burglar the single most important piece of information he actually needed before ever deciding whether your particular house was worth the risk involved at all. Number 12. The chair under the knob. The oldest trick in the entire book still works today because of nothing more complicated than basic geometry applied correctly. A sturdy wooden chair, tipped at the right angle and wedged firmly beneath a door handle with its back legs braced hard against the floor, sends any force pushing against that door directly down into the ground itself, instead of into a comparatively weak latch mechanism. It takes roughly 3 seconds to set properly, uses furniture that is already sitting right there in the room, and buys exactly the kind of critical time that a modern lock alone never quite manages to provide on its own. Number 11. The mirror at the door. Long before the peephole was ever invented and mass-produced, a small mirror mounted carefully at an angle beside the front door let your grandmother see exactly who stood waiting on the porch without ever once stepping into view or opening the door itself even a crack. If she genuinely liked what she saw reflected there, she answered warmly. If she did not, the visitor standing outside never once knew a single soul had already looked closely at them. It required no battery, no app, no monthly subscription of any kind, and it never once failed during a power outage the way a video doorbell so reliably does at the worst possible moment. Number 10. Hiding the tools. Your grandfather locked away every ladder, crowbar, and axe on the entire property every single night without exception, understanding a simple truth that modern homeowners rarely stop to consider seriously. A man breaking in completely empty-handed is far less dangerous overall than a man who finds your own tools conveniently left out for him to use directly against you and your family. An unlocked shed with a ladder casually left inside is essentially an open invitation extended straight up to a second-floor window. Putting the tools properly away each night costs nothing at all beyond the simple discipline required to actually do it without fail, every single evening regardless of how tired anyone feels. This is the part alarm companies genuinely hope you never sit down and think through carefully. Every single trick covered on this list operates completely independently of the power grid, the internet connection, and any monthly bill sent out by a distant company that has never once met you or set foot anywhere near your actual property. When the power inevitably fails, and eventually it always does fail somewhere along the line, a modern electronic system goes dark at precisely the exact moment it is needed the very most. Your grandparents built defenses that got measurably stronger, not weaker, the moment everything else around them went completely quiet and dark. That single meaningful difference explains clearly why a family relying on simple gravel and a good dog often slept considerably easier during a genuine blackout than a neighbor whose entire expensive system had just gone completely dark and totally useless overnight. Number 9. The never one basket rule. Your grandparents never once kept everything genuinely valuable sitting in one single obvious place on the property. Cash carefully split between the main house, a hidden spot out in the barn, and a trusted relative living across town meant no single break-in, however skilled or successful, ever cost the family absolutely everything at once in one bad night. Modern homeowners keep essentially every valuable thing sitting behind exactly one lock in one house, and wonder later, genuinely confused, why a single bad night proved so completely catastrophic for the entire family. Number 8. The hollow step. Nearly every genuinely old farmhouse had one particular board, somewhere in a staircase or a closet floor, that lifted cleanly to reveal a hidden space known only to the immediate family living there. Into it went the emergency cash, the important documents, and anything else the household truly could not bear to lose in a bad night. A frantic intruder working under time pressure searches an entire house for 2 or 3 minutes at the very most, never 2 or 3 hours, and a genuinely well-hidden compartment simply outlasted his limited patience every single time without fail. The family rule remained the same across generations: never speak of it outside the immediate household, because a hiding spot known to even one single outsider was no longer truly hidden at all in any meaningful sense. Number 7. The squeaking stair left alone on purpose. In a genuinely old house, the natural creaks were never once considered a flaw worth the trouble of fixing properly. Your grandparents knew with total precision exactly which board on which particular step groaned loudly under any real weight, and rather than repair it away, they deliberately left it exactly as it already was, sometimes even loosening a board further on purpose for good measure. The family slept straight through the familiar, comforting sounds of their own home night after night, yet woke instantly and completely to that same exact sound occurring at the wrong hour of the night. A genuine tripwire built directly into the very bones of the house itself. No stranger moving carefully through a dark hallway could possibly know in advance which particular board to avoid stepping on, since that specific knowledge lived only in the trained ears of the people who had actually grown up inside that exact house. Number 6. The geese on patrol. Long before anyone ever purchased a professionally monitored alarm system, farms scattered right across the entire country kept geese specifically for this exact same practical purpose. A goose sees remarkably well in low light conditions, never sleeps particularly deeply, and screams loudly the instant anything at all crosses into its claimed territory, a sound that carries considerably further across open land than any dog ever manages and cannot be easily quieted with a thrown scrap of food the way a dog sometimes unfortunately can be. Roman soldiers famously guarded their own capital city using geese for a reason that still genuinely holds up perfectly. While on a modern property line today, a full flock kept in the yard meant nobody at all, friend or determined stranger, ever reached the porch unannounced, because the entire household already knew exactly who was approaching and roughly how many of them there actually were. Number 5. The community bell. Mounted permanently on a sturdy post right outside the kitchen door, a cast-iron farm bell rung hard, fast, and in a very specific, unmistakable pattern meant exactly one clear thing to everyone living along that entire road: real trouble, come running now. It required no electronic signal, no cell tower, no service plan of any kind whatsoever, and it reliably summoned real, often armed neighbors within just a few genuine minutes. A response time that no professionally monitored alarm system anywhere in the entire country can honestly promise you even today. That same bell could be rung effectively by a small child or an elderly grandmother just as easily and effectively as by a full-grown man, meaning the alarm itself was never dependent on any single strong pair of hands actually being home in that exact moment to sound it properly. Number 4. The 2-exit rule. Your grandparents never once allowed any family member to sleep regularly in a room that offered only a single way out under any circumstances. Every single bedroom in the house had a genuine second route planned: a low window, a back staircase, something already rehearsed and thoroughly understood well before it was ever actually needed in a real, genuine emergency situation. Most modern homes built today trap an entire family behind a single door without anyone involved ever once seriously considering it a real problem worth solving properly in advance. The actual escape plan itself mattered every bit as much as the physical exit route existing, since children who had genuinely practiced the route once or twice beforehand moved through it calmly and efficiently during a real emergency, instead of freezing completely at the exact moment speed mattered the very most. Number 3. Knowing every single name on the road. This is the trick that costs absolutely nothing at all and still comfortably outperforms every single motion sensor ever manufactured and sold commercially. Your grandparents knew, by name and by face, every single person who lived within reasonable shouting distance of their own home, and those exact same neighbors knew them equally well in return. A genuine stranger simply could not move through that particular road unnoticed by anyone, because every single person living on it noticed everyone else automatically, every single day without fail, without any camera, any sensor, or a single dollar ever spent on equipment of any kind whatsoever. This is precisely the one trick modern security companies never once advertise honestly, because a neighborhood that genuinely knows itself this well has very little remaining need left to buy anything at all from them in the first place. Number 2. Hiding in plain sight. The families who genuinely kept the most valuable things never once advertised that fact to anyone around them. A plain, unremarkable coat, an ordinary truck, a house that looked exactly as unremarkable as every single other house sitting along that same road. All of it worked quietly together to ensure nobody envied them and nobody specifically targeted them for anything. Loose talk about a particularly good harvest or a little extra money set carefully aside was correctly understood, without exception, to bring real and immediate danger straight to the family's own front door eventually. Your grandparents kept quiet and kept deliberately gray on purpose at all times, understanding clearly that the family nobody genuinely envied was, almost without a single exception, the family nobody ever actually bothered to target in the first place. Number 1. The community itself. At the very top of this entire list sits the one thing that made every single other trick on it actually function properly in the real world to begin with. The gravel and the geese and the bell only ever mattered in the first place because the warning they each created reached real, actual people who would genuinely respond to it without hesitation. A single, well-defended house, standing entirely alone, remains a fundamentally fragile thing no matter how clever its individual defenses are. A genuine community that knows itself well, signals clearly and consistently, and shows up reliably without fail is nearly impossible for anyone at all to break through, on any given night, under any circumstances whatsoever. Every single trick covered across this entire list, from the humble gravel to the loyal geese to the loud bell, was only ever a smaller individual piece of this one larger truth playing out again and again across an entire road full of families who genuinely had each other's backs through absolutely everything. Here is the challenge. Pick just one single trick from this entire list tonight, only one to start with. Lay a strip of gravel carefully beneath the window, most likely to be tried first by anyone. Set a sturdy chair firmly under a bedroom door tonight, and feel exactly how solid and immovable it genuinely holds under real pressure. Walk next door sometime this week, and actually learn a name you have somehow never quite learned despite years of living right beside them. Then come back here and tell me honestly which one you actually tried out. Your grandparents protected an entire family with nothing more than genuine attention, real patience, and neighbors who actually showed up without fail when it truly mattered. Tell me in the comments exactly which trick you are personally bringing back first in your own life. I want to know honestly if the gravel gets more overall love than the geese do. Your grandparents knew precisely how to defend a home fully without spending a single dollar on any system that goes completely dark the moment the power itself does. Now you know too.